Hi, I'm Dino Tripodis tonight on Whiskey Business, coming to you from Columbus, Ohio. Lots to talk about. Sports and entertainment have the lines blurred. The college playoffs, our beloved Buckeyes, are not in them, but the Cincinnati Bearcats, good enough, are. That and so much more as Todd Jones from Press Box Access joins us tonight on Whiskey Business. And welcome to Whiskey Business, the podcast not so much about whiskey as it is one with whiskey. And we are at an interesting time in our sports lives here in Columbus, Ohio. We all watched with bated breath to see if the stars would align and maybe somehow our Ohio State Buckeyes would sneak into the playoffs. That didn't happen. But what did happen is the much-deserved Cincinnati Bearcats did get into the playoffs. The only undefeated team in college football to get into the playoffs. And we're beside ourselves here in Ohio. And we're going to take a look at the playoffs tonight as well. But a bunch of other stuff, too, because the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to the Rose Bowl. And they never say, right? There was a time, my friends, where the Rose Bowl was it. Mm-hmm. It was the granddaddy of bowl games. It was what everybody wanted to go to. And now it's just like, I believe Todd Jones referred to it as a consolation prize in the big picture. As far as bowl games go, which is not. It's huge. It's good. But we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about the playoffs tonight. We're going to talk about sports and entertainment and how the lines have blurred, because tonight when we talk with Todd Jones from Press Box Access, he's kind of an old school guy like myself. We remember a time where they were individual things, sports and entertainment, but now the lines have blurred. We'll get into an interesting discussion about that and so much more tonight. I'm thrilled that we have Todd Jones from Evergreen Podcast, Press Box Access, an Evergreen Podcast production. We are happy to be with Evergreen Podcast as well, but Press Box Access is an actual production from Evergreen, and they actually produce your podcast. We are what do they call us?
We're freelancers.
DIY.
We're independent. We're partners.
Yeah.
There's some term.
We're part of the Evergreen family.
Yeah.
But they don't produce us. You guys produce us.
They don't technically claim us, and when shit hits the fan, they go, I don't know them.
They just found you guys in a basket.
That's right.
No. They have been very gracious to invite us into the family. But where they produce your podcast, I got these two guys producing mine. John Whitney on the video side. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, sir.
And Greg Hansberry on the audio side.
Yep.
Thank you so much. And before we talk with Todd Jones from the award-winning Press Box Access podcast, recent recipient of the Davey Award. What's the Davey Award?
I don't know.
Okay. And recent recipient of the Vega Digital Award. What's the Vega Digital Award?
It's not a Viagra award.
It's not a Viagra award.
No, actually, they're two digital awards, and
actually,
happy for Evergreen.
The Vega Digital is actually a pretty prestigious award.
Isn't it the guy from Pulp Fiction?
No.
Oh,
no. Yeah, it's Vincent Vega.
Oh, that's a different award.
Not the Vincent Vega award.
Okay.
No. It's the award for a podcast that could most likely be turned into a Pulp Fiction movie.
Okay.
No, it's not.
It's a glowing award.
But both awards are pretty damn impressive. So congratulations early on in this podcast before we actually get to it, man.
Thank you.
And well deserved. Press Box Access. We'll talk about what your podcast is about as well, but people dig it, and they should, because not only is it fresh and original, it's also nostalgic at the same time.
Right.
So it's kind of like in the now, but all about back then.
Yeah.
And you do a great job with it.
Well, thank you. Very nice of you. Very nice.
You're very welcome. But before we get to all of that and all our discussions this evening, I got a couple things to do. John Whitney is embarking on a journey this month that we'll talk about before we start the podcast. We have our guest bottle and, of course, the Bitness, Hansberry.
That's right. Evergreenpodcast.com, where you can find everything Evergreen, including press box access and whiskey business information, of course. YouTube, find Whiskey Business on YouTube. Whiskey Business with Dino Tripodis.
That would be me.
Smash that subscribe button.
Smash!
Click that ding bell button.
The bell. Bing. Bing. Oh, sorry. Oh, you looking at me for
Yeah,
sound effects. I got it. I got you.
Just hit that bell button.
Bing.
Thank you, sir. And you'll get a notification every time Johnny uploads a new video. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Also, thanks for subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. Make sure you subscribe and rate, review, comment, and share Whiskey Business with all your friends and family. Word of mouth and grassroots effort is greatly appreciated.
Is the best way to do it.
You got it.
We're on Crackle now, though, right?
No,
We're on Crackle?
No, we're not on Crackle.
Oh, shit.
We're not on Crackle.
Paramount Plus.
Paramount Plus.
You
With
want
that
to
new
go
Star
there?
Wars,
That'd
Star
be-
Trek.
That would be a cool one to be on. No, we're not on that either.
None of them.
No. Our guest bottle tonight is it's a nice one. It's Elijah Craig Small Batch, barrel proof. We've had Elijah Craig Small Batch whiskey on the show, but we never had the barrel proof. It's coming in at 127
It's
proof.
hot.
Yeah, it's good, man.
It's a little hot. It's a little hot, but it's also kind of sweet as far as a high proof bourbon goes and a barrel proof bourbon goes. I don't know. I've had it before. I mean, I've had a sip already this evening, but I've had this before with my brother-in-law, and you should pick up some caramel,
Maple syrup.
a little syrupy, maybe some vanilla as well. Yeah, a little sweet, a little fruity, but also has some heat.
It's hot.
Yeah, it does. It does have some heat. It's really good and not that expensive. You can find it between $70 and $80, $82, $83.
It's a good holiday bottle.
A bottle. It'd be a great gift for anybody. It's 12 years old. It comes from the good folks at Heaven Hill. It's their 12-year version of the small batch bourbon that I was referring to that we've had on the show before. But this is the barrel proof version. So drink with caution, gentlemen, because it is 127 proof and got a little bit of a kick to it. The one thing I wanted to...
And I already got started before it showed up, too.
You did.
We're about to talk about it.
What's that? John's had a head start on everybody tonight because he's actually following the 25 days of Christmas cocktailing. This is a fun little book that I wrote 11 years ago.
Wow.
Yep.
Where I decided one day, not being a bartender, never claimed to be a bartender or a mixologist or whatever fancy word, and mixology 11 years ago was not or is not what it is today.
A lot of schnapps.
Yeah. It's a holiday book. It's a holiday book. So I decided that I would come up with 25 cocktails, one for every day. Because I used to do a thing called the 25 Days of Christmas Cocktailing,
right,
where I would actually drink every day from the December 1st to December 25th.
Well, you used to do that?
No, still. But being a whiskey drinker, what I would do was I would try other liquors that I don't pay attention to over the course of the year. So I would drink rums.
You branch out.
And vodkas. And tequilas. And even though I don't like tequila.
And ouzo.
Yeah, ouzo's in there. Yeah.
And then so I decided, why don't I just write a fun little book? And there's fun little short pieces
little
of humor
essays
about each cocktail, and one little piece of whiskey or booze wisdom, little things I've said about boozing over the years that are quotes in here.
It's fun. And at the time of this recording, we are on day 7.
You're on day 7, so you just got done with the
holiday kamikaze.
You got the Christmas kamikaze.
Yes.
Yeah, and tomorrow you've got your work cut out for you because tomorrow is the Ebenezer Scrooge driver.
Yes. So far, so good.
Did you do the George Bailey already?
Yes, we did that last night.
The George Bailey.
I like that one a lot.
The George Bailey. That's a good. It's a coffee drink. After you drink it, you wish you'd never been born.
That's right.
It's
we split that one. It's a lot of
good.
alcohol in that one.
It's a lot. Well, I can tell you, there's a lot. It starts with a cup of coffee. It's got a shot of brandy in it, Bacardi rum, Maker's Mark whiskey, and a dash of triple sec. And then stir quietly, and then ask if there's pie.
That's right. No, but this is Jen's idea. She decided that she wanted to do it. We had the book on hand.
I applaud you. This is available on Amazon.com for anybody who's looking for a last-minute stocking stuffer.
I'll try to include the link.
I keep
in our
forgetting. I never
business
plug
here,
it
too.
anymore because it's been like I always said I want to do an update to it and include
We should put it on the website.
the 8
We'll go to the
highballs of
website and buy
Hanukkah.
it.
Right.
I wanted to do like an update of 25 days of Christmas cocktailing and 8 highballs of Hanukkah. So I'll do it at some
Well, we
point.
can start doing research, even though, just
Yeah.
for next year.
Maybe for next year. For the 12th anniversary. Who does a 12th year anniversary?
You got 12-year liquor. You could have a 12-year book.
That's true. I could. So, and I know that Todd, you're not a big bourbon drinker, but you said when in Rome.
Yeah, that's why I walked
So,
over here.
it's-
We're
it's a-
neighbors. So,
we're
you know,
neighbors. Yeah, we are. We're
Drinking,
kinda
I am
neighbors.
drinking liquor tonight.
Okay. All right. So, do you like it? I mean,
Yeah, actually, I do. Yeah.
You
No,
do?
I never. It's not that I don't ever drink whiskey. I just have to be careful.
Oh, well, that's a good way.
because you've been on the podcast before, but we had to do it at the height of COVID. We did it remotely.
Right.
So you were in the confines of your home. We were all in different places as well. So this is the first time we got to do it face to face, which
that's great.
which I'm enjoy far more.
Oh yeah,
You know.
I really appreciate you having me on
Are
too.
you
Hello to
kidding me?
guys.
No,
Yeah.
because when I said, hey,
Hey, there you go.
we've been talking about forever about getting together and having a beer and a drink because we do live close by. And I said, what about the podcast on Tuesday night? He goes, oh man, great! I can come over and hang out while you guys are doing the podcast. I go, no, you are the podcast. And so I thought that was kind of humorous.
Well, I will warn you about this though. At any moment during this podcast,
Yeah.
the electricity might go out. I put so many damn Christmas lights up at my house. I went full Clark Griswold,
Nice.
Good for you.
and I'm afraid that the whole Clintonville neighborhood is just going to go
Probably didn't
dark.
take
at
much.
some
Well,
point.
you know what I always say about the electric and the power here in Clintonville. It's just someone just needs to, it's all one big extension cord. Somebody trips over it, and the whole block will go out. It's not the best grid, if you will. But I'm thrilled that you're here, man. Thrilled that you're here. So much to talk about. Let's start with. I already gave you your kudos on Press Box Access, which is you talking to sports writers from back in the day. You were a sports writer as well, which is why I don't understand you don't have a far better affection for bourbon than you do.
Well, I
Because-
think sports writers are generally more of a beer type drinkers.
Are they?
Yeah, generally.
Yeah.
At least the ones I used to run with. But again, we'll drink just about anything you put in front of us.
Put it in front of you, yeah.
hell
And you
yeah.
spent a lot of time in Cincinnati.
Yes. I was,
So let's start with Cincinnati. Let's start with the college playoffs. All right, the football playoffs.
Heck yeah.
Right? Cincinnati Bearcats get in. What an accomplishment.
It's crazy. Just totally nuts.
Because
I
you
mean,
remember being there when they
yeah,
sucked.
I grew up in that area, across the river in northern Kentucky, and I worked at the Cincinnati Post for 10 years, from like late 80s to the late 90s. And Cincinnati football, University of Cincinnati football, it was a joke,
Yeah.
total joke. I mean, nobody went to the games. They played in an old stadium that was falling apart. Nobody cared. And high school football is way more popular in Cincinnati than UC football.
Yeah,
so
Moeller High School is huge.
yeah,
down there.
yeah. To see this, they would play games at UC Stadium and draw 25,000. Cincinnati would draw like 8,000 in its own stadium, and that's not a joke. I mean, 30 years ago in 1991, Cincinnati played at Penn State and lost 81-0.
Oh my God!
Oh,
Is that the biggest blowout in sports history?
Division One?
Well, it's one of them. It's
one of
not, yeah, but so to see this happening is really, really crazy, and it's wild.
When did it-
I'm
when
just
did it-
really happy for everybody.
When did
down
it
there.
change? When did it start to move in the direction that it's in now?
I think the guy that gets forgotten is Rick Minner, who was a coach at UC back in like the early 90s, early 90s, mid 90s. He started getting some traction. And after that, you had different coaches coming in. You had Mark D'Antonio, the former Michigan State coach,
Right.
Yeah.
guy who coached here as an assistant at Ohio State, and then obviously Murphy came in. Brian Kelly came in and took it another notch.
Was he coaching when they almost beat Ohio State at Cincinnati? Remember that?
No,
Or that-
actually,
that
that
was
was
in
Rick Minner.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, in 2002, when Ohio State won a national championship, they played down at Cincinnati. And again, Cincinnati Stadium was falling apart at the time. They had play at Paul Brown Stadium, where the Bengals play, and UC almost won that game.
Yeah.
And that was Rick Minner, who, again, I think it's forgotten, but he's the guy that kind of got the ball rolling a little bit,
Right.
and made him reputable. And then from there, it just kept building. So it's not a total shock if you've been paying attention the last 15 years. But if you woke up from 1989 and you woke up now and you said UC's playing Alabama in the playoffs, you'd be like,
Right.
what planet am I on?
Yeah.
Right. And everybody, the consensus is that that Cincinnati's going to get spanked. And I disagree. I totally disagree. I mean, you talk about where Cincinnati is and the division they're in, and then you talk about and I will say it disparagingly because my brother-in-law is a huge SEC fan, and I get so tired of hearing about how dominant the SEC is and so forth and so on. But they held their own against Georgia last year.
Hell, they
right?
should have won that game.
They should have won
Georgia
that game.
kicked a field goal of 59 yards in the last play, or UC
Right.
wins that game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and
Yeah.
what we saw over the weekend with Georgia and Alabama, I mean, that's a coin toss on any given weekend in college football when those two teams meet. But to think that Alabama's just going to romp all over Cincinnati, no, I don't think so at all.
No,
They're
I don't think.
familiar with each other too. I think that
Right.
edge UC. I think.
Yeah. I think Alabama's going to win, right? But is UC going to play well? I think UC will play very well. And I think UC can play with them. And I would not be totally shocked if UC somehow won the game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be a blowout. It could. I mean, most of these playoff semifinal games, let's face it, no matter what teams have been in the playoffs, a lot of the semis are just blowouts.
Right, they have been, but I
So
don't
there's
know.
no shame if it happens
Maybe,
in Cincinnati.
maybe. I mean, I'm one of those people that stayed up and watched Ohio State play Duke in basketball, and everybody thought like, I'm not going to watch that game. It's going to be a blowout. Ohio State, boom, beats Duke.
Well, let's not forget, Alabama won 4 overtimes against a really bad Auburn team the week
Right.
before. If they lose that game, Alabama's not in.
Right, exactly, out. Yeah, and I was kind of hoping that would be the case because, being a Buckeye fan, I was hoping that the stars would align somehow
Right.
and we'd sneak in. But it didn't happen. But Cincinnati did happen. And Luke Fickell has happened.
That's right.
A guy that has maintained his composure and his focus with a job opening that everybody was talking about. And I just love this guy.
Yeah, he's done a great job. I mean, pride of Columbus, pride of Ohio State. He's got like 6 kids. His wife, they're Catholics. They're down there in a really Catholic city in Cincinnati. He knows the neighborhoods down there now. He's recruited well. They always have great high school
They did
talent.
great recruits. They're still
Yeah.
from Ohio State kids and stuff.
Yeah, when Ohio State's gone a little more national, in the last 15 years or so with recruiting, they're still getting the best Ohio guys, right? But some Ohio guys that used to always come here are starting to go other places. And Fickell's done a great job down there. Just absolutely. I'm really happy for him. He's a great guy, well respected, and I think Ohio State fans are happy for him too.
Yeah. Do you think he'll leave? If he were to get offered the job?
At Ohio State?
Yeah,
Wow.
or offered a job,
Well, I don't think so. I think if it was Ohio State, I thought he might go to Notre Dame, but I think the timing just wasn't right.
Wasn't right.
You can't. I mean, he's not the type of guy.
I mean, that's
that
one of
was
his
gonna-
wish lists. He said,
Kelly did it to Notre Dame, right?
Right.
And leaves for LSU. Fickell's not going to do that at this moment to Cincinnati. They've been good to him.
Yeah.
And let's face it, no matter what happens against Alabama next year, he's going to have a great year, right? They're building statues of him down there
Right,
practically.
right.
So he's going to enjoy the fruits of the labor and still probably be pretty good next year. So will he leave someday? Probably.
Probably.
Money talks. And
Yeah.
Well, they're
You hear all-
changing. They're changing. They're going to the.
well, they're going to Big 12.
Big 12, yeah.
But meanwhile, Texas and Oklahoma are leaving the Big 12. So, it's better than the league they're in now. But so much is changing in college athletics that
I just think it's cool that the Final Four here in college football has been shaken up a little bit. We got some. We don't have this. Alabama, Georgia.
Clemson.
Okay.
no Clemson.
No
right?
Clemson. Michigan is in there. I mean, and not that I'm thrilled about that because obviously
Never saw that coming.
they had to beat. Well, they came into the season unranked as well, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, they were so down. I mean, they had a crappy year last year during COVID.
Right.
The height of COVID. And,
We didn't play them last year.
Right. Didn't even play.
And that's what I blame. I blame the fact that they skipped us for a year and didn't play us here. Then there's the other part of me that, and shame on me for thinking this, but there's the other part of me that says, okay, this kind of sparks the rivalry again.
Well, it does, right?
It
I
does.
mean,
It kind of lights a torch under our asses for the rivalry to be actually mean something. Not that it doesn't mean something. It means we would love to kick their ass each and every year. I know that. But it does kind of now make it a little bit more contentious for next year. Like, okay, well, we're not going to let that happen again.
Right. High State's got all the motivation next year to really, bulletin board material. You
Right.
got the loss. They're going to be home next year.
Yeah, the
It's
score's
great,
gonna be
right?
on the
It's
wall,
going to be
right?
more juice to it. High State fans would love to win every year against Michigan,
Sure.
obviously, and I understand that. But, if you're looking from afar, the rivalry's a hell of a lot better when it's going back and forth a little bit. That's what makes it a rivalry.
Yeah. And, the ass kicking over I think that would have been, the 9th year in a row if we would have beat them in a row.
Right.
Yeah, so that'll be kind of cool next year.
Don't they have the overall record though?
They do.
Michigan
has
Yeah,
the
but
overall record.
they dominated so much in the first 40 years that they had a pretty
still-
big lead.
they
High State's
still
been
have,
closing the gap in the last 20
numbers.
years. I mean, they've dominated. The Buckeyes have dominated.
I bumped the camera. It's I have big feet. And
Big feet, big hands, big bank account.
you know what that means? Goofy looking guy. So, so I'm excited about Cincinnati being there. I think they'll hold their own against Alabama, and win or lose, I'm excited about the whole prospect of it.
I don't think they're. I think they're going to get their ass kicked. I don't think their schedule is as strong as. I mean, is it all style points with these guys, or eye test with
Alabama?
UC. No, UC. Why do people think that they even have a chance against Alabama?
Why do they think they even have a chance?
They don't play anybody. They only beat Notre
Who
Dame.
did Alabama play?
I'm just saying. It was the eye test. Is my question.
I'll kindly disagree. I do feel like I think they're going to play well.
Yeah.
I think Alabama will probably end up winning by a couple touchdowns. That's what the spread is, right? Vegas knows.
I think right now,
13,
I think
14.
it's 13 right now, but which I don't bet football anymore, and that's a whole nother story for another podcast. But I don't bet on college or pro football anymore.
I mean, some of the style points is self-fulfilling, right?
Right.
I mean, look at Georgia's overall year, right? They were anointed early.
Yeah.
Who did they end up beating? They beat a bad Clemson team 10-3,
Right.
right? And then after that, they beat
lost
some.
Alabama.
They lost to Alabama. They got whipped by Alabama. So you could make the argument that they should have fallen out
Out of the top four.
because once you establish like your number one team and they got the greatest defense ever, it starts to fulfill itself. It's
So
a
if you
storyline
could-
that goes on through the year,
Right.
right?
If you-
And nobody questions that.
If you could have had a say, if you could have been one of those deciding factors as to who got into the top four spots this past weekend on Sunday, who would you have picked?
Well, I'm not saying it's wrong that Georgia's in. I
saying
think that the way that
You're saying
the
they could have
season
fallen
finished,
out, though.
they could have fallen out.
They could have.
Yeah, you could have argued for that. But I think the four who are in, I think it's good. I think it turned out to be the four that,
And I'm
are
glad
deserving.
I'm glad that for right now anyway, that Alabama and Georgia aren't playing each other
Again.
right away again.
Right.
It might end up being that way before it's all said and done, but
Right.
at least not the next game.
Well, I think
Right.
one thing that does too, when Cincinnati's in it, that's kind of like the basketball tournament, where you do have an underdog, right?
Right.
A school that, they're not going to be able to hang with the Kansas Jayhawks here.
Right.
And they start hanging with them, and next thing you know, the nation's really starting to get behind it.
That's why I can't
And that might be really interesting that night. If UC starts playing well early on, hangs in her, and it's a fight,
It'll be
then
fun.
it's going to be a fun game.
Okay,
Will it be
so
a blowout? Maybe.
As a sports writer, when you dig into the emotion of that, when you write, what are you looking for? What are you hoping for? I mean, you can have your opinions here on this podcast that Cincinnati might lose or probably will lose by a couple of touchdowns. But when you're writing an article like that, if you were writing an article about this upcoming match between Cincinnati and Alabama, what would be your slant?
Well, I would dig into the contrast and the histories of the programs. As we said, Cincinnati was nobody, nobody, and obviously Alabama's always been Alabama, except for a couple occasional blips here and there. So I would just look at the way that these programs are just totally opposite in a historical standpoint, and so that makes for a rich contrast. I think journalists, you never really root. You root for yourself. What's the easiest angle on deadline tonight?
Right.
But
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I, especially in the short amount of time I've known you, I don't know if I believe that to be true about you. You root.
no, I think what you root for, though, in seriousness, is you root for the story. I mean,
Right.
that's what I used to think about.
Right.
Like, what's the best story here? What's a really good story? You know, and that's
Sometimes
where
the underdog, is it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's the underdog, you know, in sports. So, you know, I'll go into looking at that game thinking, yeah, Alabama should win this game. It's Alabama. But I'm also very intrigued by it. Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens.
What I was going to say is like, I've heard Ohio State fans who are like, why would I root for UC? I could never root for UC. Well, so what? I mean, in this situation, why wouldn't he root for UC?
Now, wait a minute. I will say this: UC, Cincinnati's a very unique town, right? It's where the South meets Germany.
Yeah.
Cincinnati doesn't even consider itself part of Ohio, really. It's Cincinnati. They call themselves the Tri-State, Kentucky, Indiana, and a little bit of Ohio.
Yeah.
I mean, that sports talk radio in Cincinnati, if they start they never talk about Ohio State.
Right.
If they do a little bit, they get angry calls about, why are you talking about the Buckeyes? You should be talking about UC or the Bengals or the Reds or Kentucky basketball. So it's really kind of funny down there that, you know, they're not Ohio State fans for the most part.
Yeah, I get that.
It's weird.
But I agree with you, Hansberry. If the Buckeyes
you
are out
root for
and
Michigan,
you live in
you
Ohio,
root for Alabama.
I mean, you know, do you go with the? Yeah,
I want them to win. I just hope
I'm just
they
kind
don't
of going
embarrass
to your point
themselves.
of like the story is the fun thing would be see UC to win it.
I'm so Buckeye damaged over the years that I don't know. I know that I should be happy that a Big Ten team is in the playoffs, but I don't know that I can
Go
root
there.
for Michigan
Right.
without throwing up in my mouth a little bit. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. I can't. No, I can't do it. I won't. I won't do it.
Don't do it.
I'm all about the Bearcats.
So you don't think Ohio State fans are rooting for Luke Fickell?
Yes, I think so. I think they should.
Yeah, but I've just heard.
But you're talking about some
couple
people.
instances that, like my brother-in-law, doesn't.
That's it. He's over it. Like Buckeyes didn't get in, and that's it. I'm done.
Well, no, not
So
so
he's
much
not gonna
that.
watch.
No, I didn't say that. He just isn't pulling for UC.
Well, there's a lot of historical bad feelings between University of Cincinnati, and Ohio State because of the basketball.
Right.
In the early 60s, the NCAA championship games, and they wouldn't play for years and years. So there's a little bit of that baked in, over the years. But I don't know. It's an Ohio school. I mean, yeah, everybody's disappointed Ohio State didn't get to the playoffs, but it's an Ohio school in the playoffs.
You have a daughter that's going there right now.
Actually, I have a daughter who's a sophomore, and I have a daughter who graduated in the spring from UC. So I have a couple Bearcats running around who, by the way, they couldn't tell you one thing about football, and I don't mean that in a negative sense.
No.
But now they're all caught up in it. They were texting me the last few weeks, Dad, are they going to get in? They're going to get in. And I just thought it was really cool that they were so swept up into the emotion of their school, like being in a stage.
Did you dig that?
Yeah, it was fun to see their joy.
The transition.
Yeah. To see they're into it a little bit.
Because I have a friend who's got a daughter who's a freshman down here,
Yeah.
and of course he's taking credit for.
Right.
So,
That's a good point.
My daughter's a good luck charm.
Well, I told people it's my tuition money well spent.
Right. Yeah.
My daughter's a good luck charm. That's why Cincinnati is in the
Paid
playoffs.
for that extra play, the extra practice session.
I mean, and I can't totally disagree with him because my friend has what I always say, he's got a golden horseshoe up his ass. So he's one of the luckiest persons that I know. And that's the.
I'm hearing some. Hearing your talking
hearing,
Santa.
You're hearing the no, it's the toilet snowman.
Oh, okay.
In the background, there must have been a breeze that came through the door. Hear that or the ghost? The ghost. Yeah. Sorry you had to endure that when you went to the bathroom earlier.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I paid the fee too, by the way.
Yeah, with toilet snowman, then if you sit down and start to talk to you, I apologize. I didn't mean to derail the podcast with a Christmas novelty item, but nonetheless, okay. In Ohio State, we mentioned this in the tease, in the conversation. Ohio State's going to the Rose Bowl. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the Rose Bowl.
It's
right?
the Rose Bowl. You and I come from a generation and a day where that's all we wanted at the end of the season was for Ohio State to play in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, for years and years and years. That is it. I mean, for the longest time in college football, really until the last 20 years, there wasn't the emphasis on the national championship. It was win your conference, go to your major bowl game.
Right.
Ohio State, obviously the Big Ten, you go to the Rose Bowl. I remember one time talking to Darrell Royal, the old Texas famous coach. He said back in the 60s one year, after the bowl game, the writers came up to him and said, "Congratulations, coach." He said, "On what?" He said, "You were voted number one." He goes, "Oh, really?" He didn't even know it. It wasn't a big deal. It was more of a regional sport. People only paid attention to whatever conference and region they were in. So it was the Rose Bowl for the Big Ten, That was what it was all about. And it's just different, right? Things have changed, obviously. And to think that the Rose Bowl was a consolation prize, that doesn't make any sense.
No, not
the
at
same
all.
way Cincinnati being good doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, right. It's crazy. It's still the Rose Bowl. It's the bowl. As far as I'm concerned.
I got to say, I was fortunate to cover like 3 or 4 Rose Bowls, and it really is spectacular. It's one of those things you hear about.
Which ones did you cover?
I actually covered Bo Schembechler's last game
Oh wow.
in the 1989 season, the New Year's Day 1990, and for the Cincinnati Post. I covered championship game at the Rose Bowl between Nebraska and Miami when Miami just boat raced them. And then there was one I covered Michigan, another Michigan Rose Bowl. I think they played, might have been SC again. So yeah, but it is spectacular. The setting and the way it looks on television actually is the way it really,
The way it really
it
looks.
lives up to it.
I've never
So-
had the.
So I think Ohio State, that's a great. They got a young team, right? They had
Right.
a great year. They got a young team. They're going to be so talented again next year. They got to get the defense fixed. So if you're going to have a disappointing year and you go to the Rose Bowl,
That ain't so bad, right?
not so bad.
Yeah.
Not so bad.
Any thoughts? Speaking of defense, any thoughts on the just breaking scoop about the new defensive coordinator?
Well, I mean, it's not a real surprise based on how the defense played,
Right.
Because let's face it, Ohio State doesn't. They're not going to wait around if you don't get it done. Ryan Day would not be here if Clemson hadn't beat Ohio State 31-0.
Right.
Shut them out in the playoffs. The very next day, let's get some new offensive coaches, and Urban Meyer went out and got Ryan Day. So they're not going to wait around, and the defense just wasn't up to standard, wasn't up to Ohio State standard, certainly. And so, yeah. So let's see what happens now.
Yeah. What's the? I know that with sports writers and your world, it's you have your own underground opinion. Is the consensus like a nodding yes? This is going to be a good thing.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not around the program like I used to be,
Right.
And I haven't spoken to any of the writers who are. So for me to be saying yay or nay, I mean, I think it looks like a great hire, but we'll see.
You like to hope to think that
Right,
not
it's an
gonna make a
upgrade.
shit- Not make a shit
Yeah.
hire, but
Yeah, I think looking at what happened the last couple of seasons, they lost so many talented guys early on defense. Chase Young, the Bosa boys.
Right.
They kind of got caught in a little bit of a wash there with they didn't back up the recruits at the level that they did on offense. I mean,
Right.
they've been stacking offense.
Right.
So they got to get some of the athletes on the defensive side that they
That'll
got
be
to balance the
exciting.
roster out a little more.
That'll be exciting if they can balance that roster out. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about formidable next year. I mean, the defense actually did start to gel as the season went on.
Right.
And I think it's going to be a good Rose Bowl. I mean, Utah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one thing about Ohio State, they better not take Utah just lightly. They don't just show up like, oh, we don't want to be
Yeah, right.
here. Utah's playing pretty good football.
Yeah, Utah.
And the last thing Ohio State wants to do now is go out and lose a bowl game.
No.
You
no,
don't
not
want to
at
have a
all.
season where you lose 3 times.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you lose this game, then you got 4 losses in 14 games, going back to the last Alabama game. That's a little what's going on here.
Okay,
So
I don't like that statistic.
Yeah, I think they're gonna.
Realize it. I don't care for it.
I think they're gonna. Well, that's the point. That's the point, right? If they go out there and just we don't want to be here. We're not taking Utah seriously, and they get beat, then you got all kinds of narratives flying around that you're like, what happened here? I don't think that's going to happen. I think Ohio State's they're going to play real well.
I think so. I think
We don't have any huge seniors that wouldn't play because they want to enter the draft, right?
Right? No,
I
not
can't
for the
think
most part.
of,
No.
yeah. Because I know sometimes that's a
everybody's-
thing.
Everybody's going to play.
Where they're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm not playing.
A
and
lot of these the only one, really.
I think they're going to play well. I mean,
He'll
they're
play
motivated.
'cause he
They
wants to
they
end up
didn't
on
like how it went up in Michigan.
No,
that was
imagine
everybody watched that on television around the nation. They don't want that image all through the fall. I mean, the fall off season. They're going to go out and play really well.
I'm hoping. I know that kind of locks up New Year's Eve and New Year's Day for me, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which kind of leads me into our next topic of conversation. Todd and I were talking about how the lines between sports and entertainment have gotten increasingly blurred over the years, right?
Really have, yeah.
And I'm going to go back to something you said just a moment ago when, hey, coach, you're number one. Oh, really? Okay. Well, now, let's just start with that stage, if you will. The Sunday selection show.
Yeah,
you
right.
know, now
3
it's-
hours long.
It's
for
3
guys.
hours long
Right.
of sports entertainment and interviews and highlights, and it's show business now. I mean, college
Even
sports.
the weekly college football rankings, they have a
Yeah,
whole
they have a
2-hour
show. There was
show
no
about it.
reason
Yeah,
for that
yeah.
other
a
than to
show.
get people mad and yelling at each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so let's talk about how those lines have blurred. And is it a good way? Is it a good thing in some ways, or is it ultimately all bad? Because I kind of remember, you made me harken back to the days where sports was sports and entertainment was entertainment.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah.
It was different.
We didn't get caught up in the drama of every day of this player and that player.
Well, I think that there's certain things that are just in play there. I mean, if you look at history, it's AD and BC. Well, if you look at sports, it's ESPN. That's the dividing line. When ESPN came in 1979, that's when it started to change because you didn't have 24/7 sports up until that point. I mean, you had Saturday game of the week. You had This Week in Baseball that
all
you
due
watched to get the highlights.
with all due respect to ESPN, they really didn't have it either. I mean, they were dragging the bottom of the barrel.
That's right.
You
Putt
know.
putt golf tournament.
Yeah, they were Australian rules football. Remember those guys with the flags that
Yeah,
come out
yeah,
there and
yeah.
look like they were landing a plane?
I'm gonna quote an old Jeff Foxworthy joke. I said ESPN is struggling for content. The other night I turned it on at 2 a.m. and saw two guys playing catch, and that's a old Foxworthy joke. But that's kind of where in its infant years, they were struggling.
Well, yeah, they were because they didn't have any of the television contracts to show the sports live.
Right.
And when that started changing throughout the 80s, then they had programming.
Yeah.
And once you have programming, then you build programming around programming. And next thing you know, you've got all these shows, and the money's going up because there's more competition to get the TV rights because you have a whole other network going into the bidding. And then Fox comes along. So you have Fox and ESPN bidding against what NBC and CBS and ABC used to have locked up. Mm-hmm. And so it just skyrocketed. So the money and the exposure really is the cocktail that changed it all. If you look at, from 1970 on, 1979 on, I mean.
And where that has been today, I mean, as far as the show business aspect of it, I mean, we talked about the selection Sunday, 3 hours long. The NFL draft is now like a 4-day Oscar ceremony.
It's incredible.
It's nuts.
I remember even in the early 90s when I was in Cincinnati, I was covering the Bengals, and draft day was you would go to the Bengals offices, which they were at Riverfront Stadium, and the Reds oftentimes were having a game because you could look through the Bengal offices and see the Reds out there playing because the draft was just going on. It was just a thing.
Yeah, it was just a thing.
And there wasn't. Yeah, everybody was interested in the first round, but it wasn't a show. Right?
How do you think it became a show? I mean, who? Like I said, this is your world. At what point did someone go, you know what, we can make this bigger and better and more exciting?
Well, it plays along with what we were talking about with ESPN. All of a sudden, if you're at ESPN, you're going to have the draft. You're not showing anything else during the week or the weeks leading up to it. And so then you have shows and you have draft analysts who spend their whole life, which I don't understand, spend their whole life basically grading guys and film and whatever. So they're talking every day for weeks at a time. That's a show. So it just kept building and propelling to the point. Now you have cities wanting to be on TV, right?
Yeah.
It's like the chicken and egg, though, where I don't realize that I want to watch that until I watch it. Then I'm like, oh, I can't
Right,
not watch
right.
the draft ever again.
Well, that's why, and that's why, like
or
when
the
you
fantasy
said
stuff.
you said, is it better or worse? I'm like, I don't think it's just different. I mean,
Different,
I don't. I
maybe.
think because if you argue that it's worse, it's kind of like saying all the music today sucks. These
Right.
kids don't know music. Well, I mean, I have kids in their young 20s. They love their music, and it means as much to them as music meant to me when I was their age. So I don't want to be the old fogey that it sucks. Sports sucks now. It's just different.
But
The way we consume it, the way it's portrayed, the way it's just always on.
So the way it's presented, do you think it's cultivating fans, basically?
I think it's
trying to do
cultivating
that?
different types of fans.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think people consume the games differently.
I know that one thing I've never gotten into because it makes my head hurt is fantasy football. You know, as far as you talk about an entertainment value. I mean, and I talk to friends who are into fantasy football, and they are into fantasy football. I mean, heart and soul.
Right.
As far as entertainment goes. And
Right. So they're enjoying that, right? So they're still enjoying sports. They're just enjoying it in a different way,
in a different kind of way.
So you got that. You know, obviously, social media has changed everything. You know, you got the Red Zone channel. You can just watch.
We were
You know, it's
talking
like you
about
have
that
the
the other day,
attention
how
of a
awesome that is.
hummingbird, right? It's like I just got to see highlights right now.
The Red Zone. I have Red Zone on my cable, and that is if there's ever been a reason for the adult diaper, it would be, it would be Red Zone because there's no.
I mean,
commercials.
other than our age.
Yeah, other than our age, because there's no commercials.
Right.
It,
Off the
it just
Foxborough.
goes. Once you turn it on, it just goes all afternoon into the early evening until they're done.
Yeah.
You don't have to get up.
And you see all the best parts.
Yeah. And once again, our short attention span theater that we become over the years.
Highlight culture, right?
Yeah, highlight culture. We just, it's called the Red Zone for a reason. They show mostly, I'd say 80% is stuff that's in the red zone,
Right.
but every once in a while they'll show a little bit more. But for the most part, it's like here's the meat. We left out the potatoes. Your team's going to score. Here's how it looks.
Well, I know. I mean, being an old sports writer, like throughout my career, it always struck me, and I would talk to other writers about this, that a lot of times the games aren't very good. They're just they're the games, and that's where back in the day it was like, well, you might have seen a good game, it might have not been a good game. Now it's more about like, if this game isn't good, I'm going to flip the channel or go to Twitter or go wherever, and I can find a better game in the moment.
Right.
And I can experience at home with my giant screen television. I don't have to pay for parking and sit next to these idiots and blah, 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 which is why you see attendance dropping. So you're consuming it differently. It's just everything's more of a spectacle, more of a, in the moment, what's really going to grab my attention. Where in the old days, it was like, it might have been a good game. It probably, for the most part, might not have been a very good game if you judge it on entertainment value.
So with these lines being blurred, are you a fan or are you, do you wish it would go back to, it's never going to go back. So let's just say wish it could go back. I mean,
I left.
Where are you?
I left sports writing 4 years ago after 30 years, and I don't pay nearly as much attention to it. And I think part of that is because
how do you do that? How does something that was in your bones for that many years that you say you don't pay that much attention to it?
Well, I do. I mean, I just don't. I think because it was work, I had to cram all the minutia of everything that was going on into my brain constantly. I think I just needed my brain was saying, quit worrying about who the backup linebacker is or whether or not they signed a punter. You know what I mean? At some point, I just don't need to know all this stuff. So I'm just much more choosy in what there's certain games I want to see and I'll watch, but a lot of times I'm just, I guess I've been to too many over the years. But whether or not I want it to be like the old days, no, because I'm not the kind of guy that sits around and, worries about, oh God, things have changed. And it's, again, I just think like.
And on Press Box Access, though, you talk to other sports writers from back in the day that were at significant, had significant careers and were present at significant moments in sports.
Yeah, and what I'm doing with that is I think of it more of a history show than a sports show.
That's a very good point.
I think of it as, I'm a big history buff myself. That's what I love to read, and I think of it as doing oral history like Studs Terkel, where what I'm doing is I'm taking these sports writers who did a job that really doesn't exist the way it did then. And just so like everything else has changed in sports, the way we report and write about sports and consume it is different. So back in the day when the newspaper was how you read your columnist and you knew the writers, there's still some of that, but let's face it, we get the news instantaneously now. These writers back in those days had so much more access, because everything wasn't on constantly.
Including yourself.
I was fortunate in that way. I came up in the late 80s, and again, that's before things really morphed into what we have now. So you didn't have 24/7 news, instantaneous. There was more trust between coaches and athletes and the media. You had more access because of that. You could talk to guys. Now it's just so much more regimented. So what I'm trying to do with this podcast is just get these guys to tell me, men and women, tell me the stories what it was like to do that job then, and document it. Because some of these folks have had incredible, the things that they witnessed. I got an episode coming up with Jerry Eisenberg from the Newark Star-Ledger. He's 91 years old. He's still writing. He's so sharp. It's amazing. He just released a novel at 91. Wow. He started in 1951. He covered more of Ali's fights than anybody.
Wow.
He was at every major Ali fight.
That's coming up. I got okay.
And so he's ringside at the Thrill of Manila. He's ringside at the Rumble in the Jungle. So my whole idea with the show was I want to get Jerry Eisenberg taped, telling his stories about what it was like to be there, to be with Ali behind the scenes, and just again, because I think it's history.
It is
oral
history.
Yeah.
It is
So,
history.
but anyway, it's been a lot of fun. I've been able to reconnect with friends. I miss sports writers. They're funny, cynical, world weary, and they like to drink beer.
And they like to drink beer
and other things
and other things too. But where is their thought process in modern day sports writing or sports reporting?
Well, I think they obviously recognize that the world has changed, right? And again, up until there was electricity, there was an industry on Lake Erie to harvest ice, and that was really important. And you did it. The world changes, right? And so what I tell them as guests is like, I don't want to get on here and bemoan, oh, the good old days were so much better, and I don't want any part of that.
You don't want
no.
You're not going to be one of those guys.
Let's just talk about what it was like to do that job. So I think they get it, and I think they're enjoying, having their own careers documented in some of the experiences, and I think it's triggering memories for them that they've enjoyed it. They've told me that, I started thinking about this certain game I covered or this athlete, and I think they're having fun with it. I know I'm having a lot of fun.
Who'd be your dream guest? That's still
well, one of them is apparently you got one of them coming up.
Well, Eisenberg, I got to tell you, I'm really, really excited about this because I'm a huge Ali and boxing fan, and his stories are incredible. But we've had some really fun guests. I mean, guys like Bob Ryan from the Boston Globe. I mean, he was covering the NBA in the late 60s.
Wow.
When they didn't even he took over the beat when they were the defending NBA champions, and the Globe didn't even send him on the road because nobody was paying much attention to the Celtics, even in Boston. So talk about the world changing. So, dream guest, I want to get more of the older guys like this, the guys in their 70s and 80s and who still have the stories that we can document. So nobody in particular, just, the men and women of that ilk. It's been a lot of fun.
You're a huge boxing fan, you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I got. Oh, they're not up here.
You took them down.
No, I took them down. I every holiday season I have to take certain things down to put
Make room for Christmas.
Christmas, but I got some boxing gloves signed by Tommy Hitman Hearns.
Oh wow.
And downstairs I have a photo signed by Hurricane Carter, and I have a few other boxing things upstairs that I can't actually recall at the moment.
Wow.
But yeah.
Yeah, Hearns, yeah. One of the writers I interviewed was Terrence Moore.
Okay.
From Atlanta. He covered the Hearns-Hagler fight, and he was so close to the ring during the fight, He looked down. There's blood all over his shirt.
Right?
Oh man.
And you're talking about, he's like, I should have kept the shirt.
Right. Yeah, that would be an awesome shirt to still have.
Yeah, right.
Well, what is it? That's blood.
Yeah.
That's blood. Whose blood? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
The champs.
Gladiator blood. Boxing. You see, when I sit down and talk to you about some of those days past and what they were and where we're now, it's hard for me not to bemoan a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's natural. I mean, that's a temptation.
I
wouldn't say I don't do it either, but
know,
I get it. Yeah.
I remember having to go to, I was living in Steubenville, Ohio at the time, and begging my uncle to take me with him to go watch an Ali fight via satellite, which was the only way to watch it. It wasn't on television. You would see the fight a couple weeks later on ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Right. Cassell would have the two fighters talk about it.
Right, afterwards. But if you wanted to see it the night it happened, you had to go to the Grand Theater, which was doing it via satellite and pay money. You had to go someplace
That's kind of cool.
to kind of watch it if you wanted to be there in the moment, as opposed now to having it beamed into your pay-per-view on TV and sitting on your couch and so forth. You had to make an effort to go someplace.
Well, think about it. This is how different it is. What do you think is the most famous sporting event last 50, 60 years?
The most famous
For America.
For America?
Maybe the U.S. hockey win over Russia.
Over Russia, big one, yeah.
Maybe that's in the conversation, right?
You sure it'd have to
1980 Olympics, Lake Placid, semifinals. Do you know that game wasn't on live television?
No, it was, you're
Tape
right.
delay. They played it at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's how different things were.
Because it was like a
1980.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I was at a high school basketball game that night, and they announced its score, and the whole crowd started chanting USA, USA, because nobody knew the result.
That's awesome.
Hours after the game. Think about
Crazy.
that. Yeah.
Crazy.
And then baseball. Think about baseball. Again, I mentioned This Week in Baseball was like a Saturday show that you look forward to. Because I know in the Cincinnati area, you never got to see American League teams.
No, never.
Never. So you got to see highlights of George Brett and these guys. So it was like seeing these aliens.
Who was the host of that? It was who was the host?
Mel Allen.
Mel Allen. Oh yeah.
Twib Notes. Remember Twib Notes?
Yes.
Yeah. And so the All-Star game would come on, and the Reds would wear their like non-black shoes.
Oh yeah.
They wear like white shoes. Like, oh, what's going on here? So,
Try to grow a mustache for 3 days.
Yeah, right, for 3 days.
Facial hair was illegal in the Cincinnati Reds.
Out of all the sports that
Marge
you've covered, I don't know if we actually covered this in the last podcast with you, but boxing's your favorite.
Well,
Why? And if so, why?
I tell you what, I came in at a fortunate time in the late 80s. I wish I had, looking back, was able to come in even earlier, because the writers who did cover boxing in the glory days of that heavyweight division said there was nothing like it when those two fighters are in the ring and they're getting ready to start. Everybody else clears out of the ring, and it's just those two guys standing there.
It's two
and
gladiators.
The anticipation and electricity. And so any writer who's ever covered major fights has told me like there's nothing that they've ever experienced like that. So that's one reason. And I just always like almost studied Ali. Like I've read so much about Ali. I just was fascinated by his life. And again, the access that the writers had to those guys, where you could just pretty much hang out with them while they were training and go visit Ali at Deer Lake at his training facility and just hang out. And so the stories, and they always had such great stories. Now, when you look at it, it's pretty brutal, right? I mean, what we know now about head injuries, and you think about it. So I see it through a different prism now than I did when I was younger. But from a writing standpoint, I wish I could have covered the Rumble in the Jungle, right? With Foreman and Ali fighting in Africa at 4 a.m, or being in Manila with its Foreman or Frazier and Ali, and it's 120 degrees in the building, and there's no air conditioning. And guys are just killing each other.
Being a boxing fan, how do you feel about boxing now?
Be honest with you, I say as I'm a boxing fan, as I don't really pay as much attention
Not
to
as
it.
much attention to it.
But I think it's kind of, as a sport, it's kind of lost its luster because I think
years now.
I think even MMA has changed that, right? People are more into that.
Which
I mean, in the 50s, boxing, horse racing, and baseball were the three major sports, right? And horse racing and boxing have kind of gone by the wayside for the most part. Mm-hmm. And baseball's just, baseball's in a much different place too.
Yeah, and we're running out of time, but baseball in danger this coming season?
Yeah, it could be. There's too much money at stake, right? And it's always that.
It's always about the money.
Right. But, you're in entertainment business. You know what that's like, right?
Right.
Fights about the money. But, yeah, I think they'll get it done eventually. They'll play. But I think what they're doing is they're just taking for granted that the fans are always going to be there. They're losing young generations of fans. I don't hear kids talking about baseball other than the ones who play travel league baseball. I don't see kids in the neighborhood playing wiffle ball. When I was a kid, we talked
a baseball player. All he wants to do is play football.
Yeah, right.
That's all he wants to do.
We become a football nation, right? So, baseball just might be more of just one of those sports. If you're really into it, you're into it, and if not, maybe you'll watch when it's a big game. And it's just not. It's not the game that I grew up with.
No, it's not. It's not.
Different.
It's not. And is that a reflection of the times?
Yeah, and again, I think things change, right? Things change. Baseball in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, it was a slower paced world, and baseball was on the radio. Everything wasn't on television constantly. It was a game that you could consume in a slower paced world. Now, it's football, man. It's football. We're a football nation.
It is about football, which goes back to what we were discussing earlier, the entertainment factor, how those lines have blurred, sports and entertainment. Football is a sport, but now it's also entertainment.
Yeah, I think about that. Yeah, I think about this game this year. The Bengals played the Packers earlier in the year, and it was a crazy game where everybody was missing kicks, and it was kind of nutty. It was back and forth, and I remember afterward the Packers won. And I remember talking to some people that I know in Cincinnati, and they were just talking about what a great game it was. And I was like, they're not really upset that the Bengals lost. It was a great game. It was entertaining. It was entertaining, right? And I think that was almost like indicative of, give us something that keeps our attention, because our attention, it's tough to do nowadays to keep anybody's attention.
And now we care about the drama, about the players, and
their girlfriends,
the girlfriends, and the
Yeah,
situation.
TMZ, baby.
Yeah, right. We care about what's going on in their personal lives and the drama when somebody gets traded or somebody wants to leave a team. It's like a soap opera,
Right,
on some level.
Yeah, the NBA's that way, right?
Right, and both the NBA as well.
Yeah, the NBA is really kind of like, that's how soccer is portrayed and consumed around the world. If you go over to Europe, that's what they're really into, is the drama of, they love their game
Of the players.
But yeah, it's Messi and the players. And the NBA's really done a great job of marketing the players. It's like pro wrestling, right? These guys have their images, and it's less of the team, it's more of the individuals. It's LeBron, it's a one-name guy, right? It's different, and the drama comes with that.
Yeah,
because they become characters in your mind. HBO
does a show, Hard Knocks, where they focus on one team and all the behind the scenes stuff, and we seem as a culture to eat that up.
Yeah, we love it, right? Well, even
well produced.
Yeah, NFL was ahead of the game in that, right? With NFL films, John Facenda, the voice of God, and the music and the slow motion and the way they portrayed it. They can make a spiraling football look like, oh my God,
this is awesome,
right?
Right? Yeah.
Fred Toggington was a creative mutation.
Right? Yeah. And see, when I think about those, because those NFL films go back how far? Maybe
60s. They're back in the 60s.
Yeah. Now that I don't put that together. I didn't think of that as entertainment, but
that was Pete Rozelle, man. Pete Rozelle, whose background was in PR before he became the commissioner of the NFL. He knew what he was doing, right? Mm-hmm. Like he got the teams to agree on a television contract for the greater good at the time, right? Which was not the way he was ahead of the game with television. He was ahead of the game with letting NFL films portray the way the game is marketed. And so here we are. Everything's kind of portrayed that way.
Look where we went from Super Bowl I to
you
where
know,
we are now,
I was
right?
thinking about that. You know, in the early Super Bowls, the first couple, 3 Super Bowls, you know what the halftime entertainment was? Like college and high school marching bands.
Right.
Think about that. High school marching band at the Super Bowl halftime show.
And they put everybody down on the first 20 rows, and they would say, "Do not pan up from here."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
No one was there.
Nobody was there.
Yeah, and the game is played in the daytime.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so what is it worse than it used to be? Is it better? I don't know. You know how many people were in the stands when Roger Maris hit his 61st homer?
No.
19,000.
Jeez.
Do you know Game 7 in the 1971 World Series did not sell out? It was a day game. Game 7 of the World Series didn't sell out. So was it better or was it worse? I don't know. It was just different. You know? So everything's more of a spectacle in the show, and that's fine. People love it. You know, people are into it. It's just different. Than
Where are you with it, though?
I'm kind of, again, I still have interest in it. I still find storylines that interest me, but I don't sit around 24/7 thinking about it.
You still write?
I still write a little bit, but
And when you do write, what do you write about?
on the side. But my writing job now is at the High State Alumni Magazine. So
Right.
every once in a while I'll write a little sports, but I'm writing other stories. But in my spare time, not really. I mean, I'm not thinking about writing anything. I'm talking to writers on a podcast.
Yeah, no, that's great, and you're doing that. But like I said, something that's bred in the bone, like it has been for how many years? 30 years?
Yeah, 30 years in sports. Yeah,
So if you were to write a book today, what would you write about?
that's a good question. I'm big on like trying to take a team or a moment in time and putting into historical context. I was always fascinated by like the 1968 Buckeyes, and that year being so traumatic in American history. And then you had this Ohio State team coached by this old military guy, Woody Hayes, and they were able to keep focus while all the chaos in the world was going around them. And so I've taken an idea where you can put the context of what was it about that team that resonated with people then. Why was it important to people?
I'd read that
time?
book.
Yeah, well, that book's been written by somebody else. Go other guys, but so. But I was just using that.
Then I need to read that book.
But I was using it as an example.
example.
Like, you think about that like with music, like what made a band hit at that moment,
Right.
Or a comedian, you're in that world, and what made a show or a movie so important in the culture of that time. That's kind of how I look at sports when I think about it in the past.
Let's close on something that I did not know. That's a little bit of trivia. Let's go back to Ohio State in the Rose Bowl this year. Let's go back to something I did not know, which I find remarkable, and tell me why and how that happened. The 1961 vote, when Ohio State gets asked to come to the Rose Bowl. Now, when a college is asked to come to a bowl game, what is all involved in that? Who has to say, check, yes, we're in?
Well, it depends on the school, the conference, and everything else. So here's the context of this. So we're talking about how the Rose Bowl was it for Ohio State, right? And all the Big Ten schools at the time. Well, they had a contract from like the late 40s up until like 1959, where the Pacific Coast League, which is now the Pac-12, and the Big Ten champs would play in the Rose Bowl. But that contract fell by the wayside for a couple of years. So in 1961, Ohio State won the Big Ten. The Rose Bowl invited them to come out, but the Ohio State Faculty Council thought that the school was getting too much of a football reputation, and they voted to decline the invitation to not go to the Rose Bowl. Now, that is incredible, right? You think that is nuts.
It sounds
nuts.
Yeah.
But do you know this is also true? Notre Dame never played in a bowl game until 1973, I believe. They just didn't go to a bowl game. That wasn't what they thought was right at that time of year with exams, and
so they would constantly decline.
They would just not go. They wouldn't
go.
Notre Dame didn't go to bowl games all those years. Wow. So it wasn't like today where you got 40 bowl games because ESPN needs television content. You had like
Duracell Battery Bowl.
You had like 8 bowl games,
right.
6 bowl games, and So anyway, the faculty council votes not to go. People go crazy, obviously. There's a riot in Columbus. And Minnesota accepts the bid and goes out and wins and gets beat. No, actually, they won. I have to think about that. So Minnesota goes to the Rose Bowl instead of Ohio State. And think about Ohio State declining a Rose Bowl now.
No, when you told me that story, I'm like, really? That happened?
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy. And the whole idea of bowl games. I mean, the Rose Bowl is the original Rose Bowl. I mean, the original bowl game. And it came about because they were trying to sell real estate in Los Angeles.
Really?
Yeah, in the early 1900s, LA was like, we need people to come out here and live. We got to get some news and publicity. What are we going to get people to do? Let's have a football game. Well, they tried that for a few years. Yeah, it didn't really work. Do you know what else they had? They had chariot races. Oh. Seriously, look it up. They had chariot races
for a Coliseum there.
Yeah, out there. Yeah. That didn't go over real well either. So let's try the football thing again, you know. So that's how the Rose Bowl became a thing, because they wanted teams to come out to Los Angeles, and it would be on,
sure,
get some attention in the newspapers, and people would think, well, what's this? Southern California seems kind of nice, you know.
Get the parade.
And so then when TV came along, it's like you're sitting in Columbus and it's 14 degrees and gray, and you turn on your television on New Year's Day, and look at that. It's the mountains, and it's beautiful. I want to go out there. It was all marketing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of marketing, I want to meet the salesman who got everybody on board for chariot races.
Yeah, right.
That is one hell of a
I think we should go back to
there.
that. I think we should have that. How would Vegas put a line on chariot races?
Chariot races.
You know what? I'm taking Ben-Hur. I know that.
Todd Jones. Press box access on the Evergreen Podcast Network, the award-winning Press Box Access, a recent award winner of the Davey Award and the Vega Digital Award. Now, that may not mean anything to you, but what it means in the podcast world is that that's a podcast that's got a lot going on, from quality and content, and, I might add, its host.
Oh, you're too kind. Thanks.
Yeah, no, man.
To me, it's all about the guests. They got great stories. I have fun
what we
talking
say.
with them.
We're only as good as our guests, and
that's why nobody's going to listen to this one. Huh?
No. We're only as good as our guests.
Buried in the holidays.
And our guest tonight has been awesome, man. It's been great to hang out with you. Thank you for your thoughts, your insight, your humor, and continued success on Pressbox.
Hey, thanks a lot.
May it continue to grow and get more and more people, because I do like the fact, you're right, it is more about history than it is about sports. And I'm glad that you're giving those legends in sports writing a voice to kind of teach us and help us remember how it was.
Yeah, sometimes their stories are just funny.
Right,
right. There's some entertainment there.
And I imagine you've got, we'll have you back again to just talk about.
You want to have me move in? I mean, you charge me rent?
Whatever the case.
Put me down in the basement or something?
You live down the street. But I may have you back on a podcast where we just focus on nothing but the body stuff. All the body, not body, BAWDY, all the crazy stuff over the course of your 30 years.
Oh, I can spill some things.
Yeah.
I got a few things.
I think that would be a fun podcast.
I can't help but to fit a little Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with you.
Right.
Him out in Vegas getting into trouble.
Because you were how old when you started?
Well, I was right out of college. So,
right.
I had, I'm 56, but I got a lot of miles on my tires.
Exactly.
Too many late nights in too many cities.
I'm still doing that. Too many late nights. I don't know about the cities.
Except now I get up when I used to get in.
Wow. And on that note, great line to close with. I want to thank you again, man. Todd Jones. Check him out on Evergreen Podcast Network, Pressbox Access. Hansberry, I want to thank Greg Hansberry, our audio producer as well. Throw a little more business out there before we close.
Evergreenpodcasts.com, by the way, for Pressbox Access and Whiskey Business, and plus a whole, truckload of other great podcasts, all from everything from kids shows to true crime stuff.
That's great.
They cover a lot of bases, man.
Subscribe to Whiskey Business on YouTube, Whiskey Business with Dino Tripodis. Thanks for subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And make sure you like us on the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I think, can we tease our Christmas episode next week?
We can tease our Christmas episode. Before you do that, let me just also thank you can catch us on YouTube as well. Thanks to our good friend,
That's right.
our video producer, John Whitney. That was a quick thumb, man.
All right.
Give me a longer thumb.
A longer thumb.
I got a longer thumb.
John Whitney does the amazing work on our YouTube channel as well, so check us out
Day
on YouTube.
8 tomorrow for the cocktail book tomorrow.
Day 8. Yeah, that's right. You got the Ebenezer Scrooge driver.
Cannot wait.
Yeah.
Great name.
You're going to run into a couple that you're not going to like. I'm telling you that right now. Yeah, Day 9, the Scotch Pine Spritzer.
Oh, my God.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
It's yeah, it's you would love some of these. Otan and bombed. Yellow Snow is in the mix. Yeah.
Looking forward to
The Red Rider BB gun. We Three Kings Disoriented Are. These are all
Where can people find that book, Dino?
they can find this book on Amazon.com if they so desire. Yeah, I always forget that I wrote it.
I'll put a link on the website.
Put a link on the website. The Bipolar Express. Oh my God. Okay. What was I thinking 11 years ago? But thank you to John Whitney, and God bless you for actually attempting this, because it's no small feat.
And your wife, it was her idea.
It was her idea to do it. She went out and bought all the booze.
That's a lot of booze.
Yeah,
So it's a pricey.
a lot of cordials.
It is. Well, it's a holiday cocktail book.
understand
It's
that.
supposed to be.
It's a different world now.
It was. It's 11 years ago. And then again, maybe I was ahead of my time
That's true.
on some level, because now with the craft cocktails and whatnot. No, I was not ahead of my time. All right. One last thank you to Greg, John,
Cheers.
Todd.
Yep.
My name is Dino Tripodis. Thank you for tuning in to Whiskey Business. And until the next bottle, see ya.